Hello, my name is Aralia Ramirez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the coordinator for the first year experience program at Chico State. In my role, I oversee the student event planning team for the Chico State Town Hall. And so first, I just wanted to thank you for taking time to record this interview with us. We're excited to spend a few minutes talking and learning about your experience with contacting government officials and agencies. So to get us started, could you please tell us your name, your occupation, and a little bit about your experience with political activism?
So my name is Chris Constantin. I'm the City of Chico's Assistant City Manager, and I've been involved in government in one way or another from 1996 when I first was elected to public office at the age of 19. Since then, I've worked for 4 different cities, the city of San Jose and San Diego, the city of Hayward, and now the city of Chico.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So for this interview, we're going to be specifically talking about the action of contacting government officials and agencies. What can you tell us specifically about that action, and how committed are you to the overall efficacy of that action?
So most of the time, we get inquiries, but when you look at a population of Chico of 110,000, we get only a handful of inquiries. People really don't take advantage of the opportunity to talk to somebody like myself, our city manager, or other department heads throughout the city. And so we're left to having to operate under the assumptions that what we're doing really is aligned with what the community desires. And so from an efficacy perspective, when you know we don't get that many contacts, you can imagine that when you do reach out, it's important. But when you do reach out, do it in a constructive and professional manner that understands our time pressures, and it makes it even that much more important.
Awesome, thank you. And that leads perfectly into the next question that I wanted to ask you. What are some tips that you can share about successfully using this action? And can you share any success stories that you've had with using the action?
So as I mentioned, for each department head that has a 40-hour work week, they're probably working 60 to 70 hours on average. And so their time is very, very limited. And so when you're looking at the kind of issue that you really care about, articulating that issue in a very succinct manner with the rationale behind why it's important is critical. How you engage that official is also important. You have to understand that email probably is best. Telephone could work, but ultimately the most effective is if you can get before them to be able to talk to them and have that face-to-face interaction. And so what I typically like to do is when I receive a letter, I read them. And would you believe it, the last time I received a handwritten letter was probably 6 years ago. So you can imagine if you wrote me a handwritten letter that was well thought out, that it really identified an issue and asked that I would want to sit down and meet with you, that 99.9% of the time, I'm going to say yes. That's a very effective way to get in front of me and to be able to advocate your position.
Wow, thank you. Wow, 6 years since a handwritten letter. That's quite some time. Thank you for sharing that. So another important thing that we kind of wanted to ask, and just to hear more about, what are some obstacles a person might face in using this action, and how can those be overcome? So for example, what do you do when your ideas are met with rejection from a politician?
So here's the issue we typically face. Government is very complex. Pick the issue. It's not easy. Police use of force. It may seem straightforward. It's not. Government finance, even more complex than use of force. And so anything you look at, to us, the average person, it may look like, why can't you just do this? The person you're talking to, whether it's an elected or an appointed leader such as myself, has a level of depth and detail on the matter that we fully understand it. So when you're writing to me and saying, why do you have to shoot somebody when you're engaged in a use of force, there's nuances to that. And we know that, but you don't. And so when you engage me, the best approach is to really look at the obstacle you want to overcome is coming across as if I'm telling you what you need to do without a full understanding of the situation and the nuances involved. So you want to convey, I have a concern about this police shooting that occurred. I don't need to talk about the specifics of it, but I'd like to sit down with you to talk about the nuances that I may not understand as to why this is occurring and how it occurs and how I best could be a part of a very positive process to improve the situation as it involves police shootings. So now you've come to me in a constructive manner. You're admitting that you don't know the depths and nuances, but you are saying you're concerned about the issue, and you want to hear from me how you can be a part of the solution. That's a very effective way to get over the obstacle.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. So when somebody reaches out to you to express their concern, whether that's email, phone call, handwritten letter, whatever it may be, what are some other actions that could complement it to make it more effective?
So a letter followed up by a phone call or an email is one way, or an email and then followed up with a phone call. So the theme here being more than one way of communicating. The letter would be effective in knowing that it got directly to me, especially if it was handwritten, because it tells me that you took the time to write to me. And knowing that we don't receive them all the time because people are now all about social media, emails, maybe a phone call, that letter is probably the most effective, but a follow-up call a week later would be effective. An email follow-up to that, which prompts me to say, I know you're really busy. You probably didn't have a chance to read my letter, but I'd really like to sit with you and talk to you. Doing two of those approaches together within a week apart is probably the most effective way to get somebody's attention, especially somebody that may be extremely busy.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see how consistency and follow up would be key to that. So thank you so much for explaining that. And just a final question, one that we ask everyone that we interview, is there anything else that you would like to share that you want to make sure that our student population knows when it comes to this specific action?
So each of us have our own personal views. I do as an individual also. But as a professional in this role, I have to understand that I represent the entire community. And so I'll be asked to do and research things that I may totally disagree with. For example, I'm not a big cannabis person. I never did it in college, never tried to. It's not that I'm going to keep it from you either. But when you're approaching me with the issue of cannabis, don't make the assumption of what you think that person's beliefs are related to that issue. So your position may be different than mine. And so what you want to do is get an understanding of this, what my position may be. And it may be researching me beforehand and maybe getting an idea, oh, here's something he wrote that he said he's never tried cannabis before. That would be a clue that maybe I can't assume he's going to be totally pro gung-ho on cannabis. So I need to approach him with an understanding that he may not be supportive of that personally, and to gauge in the discussion when I'm advocating for the position of expanding cannabis use in our community, mirroring that with his view that may not necessarily mirror what I want to accomplish, and being respectful of that and how you present that information. And so I think that's probably the most important, is to say in a nutshell, know your audience when you're communicating. And when you know your audience, adjust to your audience, and then find a way to accomplish what you want to convey.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge with us. We're really excited and just thankful for your time, knowing that we have to do the Action Symposium virtually. I know our students will really appreciate getting to hear from you, even though it's virtually this year. So thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And for those of you who want to go into government, it's one of the most honorable professions, and I hope you do.
Awesome. Thank you.